Hello everyone, it's Judy from Coffee, Cookies, and Books, and what I'm going to bring you today is part one of my May reading wrap-up. So hopefully you'll stick around for it. And it's great to see you back. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to split my reading wrap-up for the last half of May between two videos. This one is part one, and it's going to be my least favorite books of what I read in the last half of May. And then part two is going to have all of my wonderful stats and everything along those lines, and all of the books that I enjoyed the most in the last half of May, including probably the best book I read for the month. So, without further ado, we will get started because we do have a lot of books to cover. Now, I believe I have about 14 books, but 2 of them were DNF. So we're going to talk about those first. The first one, because they were both ebooks. So the first one was House of Bane and Blood by Alexis Menard. I literally got 53 pages into the book and it wasn't for me. I didn't care for the characters, didn't care for the writing style. So I DNF'd that one. It was Kindle Unlimited, so didn't have to buy that one, thank God. The other one that I DNF'd was The Wraith King by Juliette Cross. Now, I did read 70% of this book, and I had just had enough by the time I got to the 70% mark. I was not enjoying the characters. The princess, there was Princess Una and then the Prince Gall. And they were from 2 very different factions. And of course, they were at war. But they were at war initially because of Princess Una getting captured 5 years previously by Gall's father. And he had her in a dungeon, and he was basically going to kill her. Gall saved her. She didn't know he was the prince at the time. He was more like a prince in hiding. And eventually it comes around. Gall kills his father, who is just a nasty piece of work anyway. And he demands Una as his bride because they are winning the war. His people are winning the war. And I just found the whole thing like, me man, you woman, and I'm going to force myself on you and you're going to like it. And then she likes it. I just hated it. And I'm like, I got to that point. The first part of the book, I was okay with it to a point. And then it just lost me. So I gave up on it at 70%. And I will say I would not go back and read this one because I did not enjoy it. So that was that one. Okay, so the next one we have is the Closeup. So I have that in physical form. This is by Pip Drysdale. And this book, really didn't like it. Didn't care for the main character, Zoe. She, quite young, she had been given a book deal. So this I found kind of not very realistic. I don't know, at the age of like 20, 21, she had $1 million book deal and she's supposed to write 2 books and she wrote one and she can't write the second one. And I'm like, who's going to give some 20-year-old $1 million? Like I found it a bit unbelievable. So it was a bit of a stretch. And then she's in LA and the whole vapidness of LA and the emptiness of the characters, just all of that didn't work for me in this particular book. Now, I will say part of it could be that I read a lot of books in the month of May for Escape the Readathon. And by the time I got to the last half of May, I was getting much harsher with my judgments on some of these books. So I would say that there's 2 or 3 that I potentially might go back and reread. This is one of them. And just simply because maybe the month just I wasn't feeling it. So I might reread this in July or August. I think it's a very summery book, and it's, obviously lighter content, even though technically it's supposed to be a thriller, crime sort of thing. But yeah, and the ending was weird. But I did find kind of the last 25% of the book, I liked it a little bit more than the beginning part of the book, and I don't want to give away too much. The ending was crazy. And some people probably may not like the way it ended because it was a weird ending. I kind of liked the way it ended. So anyway, yeah, I may go back and reread it. It could just be that I was just coming off a few books that I really loved, and just this one just didn't grab me. And there were a few that I read that are in this pile that we're going to go over that were like that, and they just didn't grab me. Okay, so the next one is Love in the Time of Serial Killers. So in this particular one, so we've got Phoebe Walsh, and she is a PhD student, and then Sam Dennings, who is the guy who lives next door to her father's place. Now, her father has passed away, and she is going back to her father's house to clean out the house. And she has this weird fixation for serial killers, and her PhD is kind of based on that. But for some unknown reason, she thinks the neighbor is a serial killer. Like, that whole thing just kind of, I thought it was a bit hilarious, but it was also kind of stupid. Not my favorite. I also found the book really dragged. It was so slow. And with the two of them getting together, like how they got together, it was boring. I mean, just boring. Now, I do have 1 or 2 more books from Alicia Thompson, the author of this particular book. So I'm hopeful that they're not as boring as this was boring. Okay. The beginning was cheeky and it was cute, and the rest of it was like dead air. So, yeah, Love in the Time of Serial Killers. So that's that one. Okay. So then the next one I have is A Beauty Queen's Guide to Murder by Kristen Bird. In this particular book, the main character, Dakota, has lost her mom. Her mom died from cancer, and every month there's a letter from her mom and telling her to do something. So we're getting almost to the 1-year anniversary of her mom's death, and her mom has entered her into this beauty competition. Okay, so fine. So she agrees to do it because her aunt, who is her mom's sister, really wants her to do this and knows that her mother really wanted her to do this. So she enters it. And of course, when they get to the competition, there's a dead body. And her aunt is being carted away as the main suspect. So the whole thing kind of goes through the investigation of it. It was a little bit confusing through it. And I did find like her character was a little on the flat side. It just didn't come to life for me. And the one character who did, which was her aunt, wasn't there for a good portion of the book because she was off in jail. So it just, yeah. And like some of the stuff was just so stupid. Like, technically I think it was supposed to be like a cozy murder mystery. And I read a lot of those, but I find that the ones that work and that blend humor with the book tend to have a great plot that moves along really, really, really super fast. And I found this did not do that. And so in the end, I didn't care for it. I know that there's supposed to be a sequel to it. Will not pick it up. did not like this one enough to say that I would want to read on. It's unfortunate because I thought I was going to like this one, but did not happen. Okay, so then the next one is This Book Will Bury Me. So I have quite a few thoughts about this one. Now, the main character, Jane, has lost her father. Her father died. She was in college, university, and she's depressed. I mean, this whole book is about Jane's depression. What happens is she's depressed, she gets online, and as many know, she's depressive and she's influenceable, and she gets kind of thrown in with this group of online investigators. You know the ones, they're the ones who, like, there's a case and they're snooping. They're butting their noses in and they're trying to solve the case. And I know that happens because I see it all the time. And I thought that that part was kind of interesting. But what happened was her character was so depressing that throughout the book, it's like it's just dragging because she's dragging, right? Now, it got to, I guess, about 70% in and got really good. I don't want to say what happened, but between that and to the end, what happens was insane. But I hated the ending. Absolutely hated the ending because of where Jane ended up in the end of the story. So it was like from the beginning to the end, she went nowhere in between. Meanwhile, all these things happened. So it's where she kind of ended. And I suppose that's a bit of a spoiler, but yeah, and it made me a little sad for her. Now, I will say that this, again, like the Closeup, is another one that I think for sure I'm going to reread this one again. And because I think I need to kind of not read all of these also, number one, all at once. It was too much all at once. And I think that coming off the Closeup, I think I went pretty close from the Closeup into this one. And just probably wasn't a good idea to do that. So I do think that it would be better for me if I reread this. Yeah, it was kind of boring. Now, the other thing is this is based on the Idaho 4 murders. It's loosely based. Obviously, the story's written around that, and it's built into sort of that structure is there. So a lot of people have said, that she's cashing in on what happened, but I don't really see it that way. But the problem I have is there wasn't enough of a differentiation between that and this book. So I'm going to use this as an example, Bright Young Women, because I really quite enjoyed that one. Now, Bright Young Women is based on the Ted Bundy murders. So it's based in the same time frame, late 70s, early 80s. But it is a complete rewrite. It's from points of views that had nothing to do with Bundy, and it was not one point of view. This was one point of view, so a little bit different. And it just felt like, yes, it was part of that, but it wasn't really. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was built on that. That was the basis for the story. But this one just felt like it was a little bit too similar, a bit. But, yeah, it was just weird. Anyway, I am going to reread it. I'm going to reread it along with the Closeup for sure. And I'm going to split them up and probably read them through the summer. This one I might wait till fall to read again, but they are going to go back on my TBR. Yeah. So anyways, This Book Will Bury Me by Ashley Winstead. And you know what the shame of it is? That I've heard so many good things about Ashley Winstead's writing. That's why, one of the reasons why I want to go back and reread it. And I don't want to read another one of her books until I've reread this one. So, okay. Next one. We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. This is the third one that, again, so what we're talking about with the close-up and what we're talking about with This Book Will Bury Me is the same thing that we had in this book. And it is a character who is depressed. So they have mental health issues, clearly. And you knew that immediately as soon as you started reading and about Eve. The thing about this one, which is why I may not reread this one, I may just leave it as it was. I didn't care for this book. It was so broken in the storyline, and there were sections where they put in these little parts where it would go into sort of like a like it was giving documentation about a case or about something knowledgeable or whatever, but it didn't necessarily make sense with the story. And in the end, the story made no sense whatsoever. And then the person who was supposed to be the secondary character, who is Charlotte, who was her partner, the two women were partners, okay? She was on page for a very small part of it, but at the end, she plays a very important role. So I was like, it kind of lost me in that. And I felt that for that reason, it kind of lacked character development. The other thing is we tried to build in kind of a sort of sci-fi fantasy element a little bit into it that was just not well done. It really disappointed me because I think that if it could have tied it all together a little bit better, and I think maybe part of it is because the book wasn't very long. It was only 300 pages. And I honestly think if this is one case where if the book had been a little longer, there had been more opportunity to flesh out some of these characters, including Charlie's character, who I felt should have had more page presence, okay, in the book, instead of just Eve mentioning her and Eve constantly mentioning her, then I think Charlie herself should have been more present. And I will stand on the hill that's built on, and that's how I feel about this book. Yeah, just huge disappointment. Now, I don't know if I'm going to bother rereading this one because the way that the structure of it and how it was set up and how it was broken up so much throughout the story. I didn't have those issues with the other two books, didn't have that. So I may not bother with this one, but yeah, I didn't care for it very much. It just was a bit disappointing. Okay, so then the next one is Ghost Camera. So I'm not going to say too much now. Ghost Camera is a ton of short stories, and the only story that I really liked was the Ghost Camera story. That was the longest one in the book. I think it was 100 pages, around about that. That was one I liked the best. I thought that was absolutely a fantastic premise, but it was too fast. You know, like I would have loved to have seen that in a full-length book because I would have read that 100%. I think that I want to read the series about the girl that talks to the dead that Darcy Coates wrote, because that sounds like something that I would really, really, really love. And I do have a couple of other Darcy Coates books that are not structured like this. Yeah, I just didn't. The other short stories, I read them. They were fine, but that's all. The main story was the one that I found the most gripping. And like I said, it was just too short. So yeah, if you like short stories, though, and you probably will like this because some of the stories were fine, but I'm not a short story person. Not typically, unless they're novellas that go with other stories, then typically, yes. And I mean, shorts usually, for me is usually about 150 pages. So, yeah, that one. So then the next one that I read was Flawless. And, that was kind of like middle of the road for me. I read it as an ebook. That was Rhett is a bull rider, and Summer works for her father's PR company that has to deal with him. So that's how they end up getting kind of, shoved into each other's company. And she is, what is it? She's mid-20s, and I think he's early 30s. I think there's pretty good sized age gap between them. The thing that I kind of made me a little bit crazy about this one, and I did write that down here, is she had been sick when she was young. Now, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. Oh, yeah. So I said if she mentioned one more time about her surgery when she was younger, I was going to run amok around the neighborhood screaming, no more, no more. We get it. You were sick, but you aren't anymore. So let's move on. I'm not that I'm trying to be insensitive. This is what I wrote. Not that I'm trying to be insensitive, but tell us once and then go from there. It was like her whole character was built around her being sick. So I had a really hard time kind of getting into her at all. I liked him. I thought he was kind of cool. Loved his dad. Thought the brothers were characters. Will I continue on with the other books? I don't know. I had this in Kindle Unlimited and did not automatically load in the next book, and that's usually a dead giveaway whether or not I liked it. And so yeah, I'm not really sure I liked it enough to go on from there, but it was very middle of the road for me. It was half decent romance, but all in all it was a bit predictable. She can't resist him, he's attracted to her, they fall into bed together. She thinks he doesn't care. They break up. He grovels. It's happily ever after. That was the story. So we shall see if I continue on from there. So after Flawless, we've got a couple more ebook romances, and they were a little bit better. They were kind of very middle of the road for me, but I did enjoy them. So the first one is the Lumberjack by Susan Stoker, and this is the final book in a 4-book series, and it was okay. I had high expectations going into this one, and it did not meet my expectations. And the reason it didn't meet my expectations is because of how she wrote this. So it's April and JJ, so Jack, and they have been through the whole series. So April worked for lumber company that Jackson and the other 3 guys owned and run in Maine. And April worked for them right from the get-go. April and Jackson have danced around each other throughout all these books, and it's like he's younger than her. Now, I can't remember exactly how much younger than her, but I think maybe 5 years younger than her, because I think he's 39, 40, and she's 45, I think, if I remember correctly. Could be wrong, but I think. So it's something like that. But she is the older woman. But, neither here nor there. They're both on the older side. But she doesn't think he's attracted to her, and he doesn't think he's good enough. It's just like one of those things. Anyways, the way the story starts off is she has gotten into an accident, which was at the end of the 3rd book, and she now has amnesia, and she can't remember the last 5 years, which is like, why 5 years? Like, just like, I get it's retrograde amnesia, but it just seemed weird to me. So there's that. And then him, he all of a sudden, he's like this groveling puppy dog with her because he almost lost her. And oh my God, and all, like, it was just bizarre. And then out of nowhere, there's this weird ex-husband who was her ex, and she remembered divorcing him because it was a good bit before the 5 years, and why she divorced him. She didn't forget any of that. And he's like, all of a sudden, well, I think we should be married again. Get men like, blah, blah. And she's like, get lost. And I'm like, they didn't need him in the story. Like, yeah, he was a completely useless character in the story and could, like, was just dumb. I hated that whole thing. And then it ended up, oh God, I don't want to say too much because it gives away a lot of it, but it ends up that at the end, they have to rescue all of the women, all the wives in April. So there's the 4 women and they have to rescue them. And she brings in all of the characters from her other series to help them. Now, this is very much like what Brittany Sahin does. She brings in a lot of these characters. The problem with all of it is that it felt very disjointed. It did not feel like Brittany's feel, where they just very much feel like they fit into the story. It just didn't flow well for me. And I think it's because she tried to jam too many of them in. So I didn't care for that. It kind of ended the whole series off on a bad note for me. Saying that I didn't hate it, but I will say that I don't know if I'm going to pick up another one of Susan's books because her books tend to be very formulaic, and I don't typically care for that. Once you've read through a lot of books and it's the same formula constantly without a lot of change in the characters and how they react, I think, it's at a point where I'm pretty much done. So that was the first one. Now, the other one that I read was North, and North was by Anna Hackett, and this is the second book in a new series that she's writing, and North is the doctor on Hunter Squad, and the Hunter Squad is a squad that goes out and searches for all of these weird monsters that have been left behind by aliens that they had a war with. And they won the war, but they've got a new war that they're dealing with, which is all these monsters. And the story, there is a kind of a side plot story that is developing kind of in the background, which I think is going to be really, really good. Now, these are very short books. They're only about 183 pages. So they're not it's like a fast, suspenseful read. But this box plot that's going in behind, I think it's really great how it's developing. And I can't wait to see what happens with that. And it has to do with the monsters and what's happening with the monsters. So I love that. So this was North. North is the doctor on the squad. So he's the medic. And then another squad member, Jessica, who is a new team member. So she is from San Diego, and she has come in now. The squad, Hunter Squad, is in Australia, in Sydney. They call it New Sydney, what's left of it. And that's where they operate out of. And they are the squad, one of the squads that you want to get on. And so Jessica has joined them. So she's new. And so this is the development of the relationship between Jessica and North. Now, I will say they did kind of fall in love a bit too fast for me. I didn't have an issue with the point where they started having sex because they had already been together for a bit as team members before the books kind of started, right? So I kind of didn't have a problem with that. What I had a problem with was all of a sudden, especially him, all of a sudden they're in love. So I had a bit of an issue with that, but I still liked how all the teams developed. And the one thing that she writes, and Anna Hackett writes really, really well, is the fight scenes. So what happens with when they're fighting and they're dealing with these monsters. I love it. And she writes that so good. So that's why it's like, I suspect as the series develops, that part will actually get better because it's happened in all of her other series. So I expect that will happen in this series. So yeah, did enjoy it. And we'll go on to the next one for sure. All right, so then the next one I also read as a ebook. It was Crescent Kingdom by Tessa Hale, and that is a fantasy, paranormal, why choose fantasy romance. And it has Ren, and she is the female main character, and she is a wolf shifter, a caster, and an empath. And of course, that's a rare combination, of course, because that's kind of typical for these fantasy romances. And then you have the 5 wolf shifters. So there's Kingston, and he's the alpha. There's Puck, Locke, Bricks, and Ender. And they are actually a mercenary security group. So they actually go out and they save people from bad guys and all the stuff like that. And so they're gone on a mission when Ren arrives in town, and Ren gets a job at a bar, and she's been there about a month when these guys show up, and they are suspicious of her right away because while she can mask her scent, she does not smell like a human, okay? So they know there's something different about her, but they can't tell for sure what it is. And so they're very suspicious. Now, obviously, this has a certain amount of spice built into it. None of the scenes, though, the way that they're written, are necessarily just about the sex. There is a very much a certain amount of it's building the relationships between them. Essentially, she's not got to a point where she's been with all of them. So that has not happened. It's been kind of a little bit with one and a bit with the other. So it was 2, and that was not like full on sex. And then there was one other one where she actually helped him through a very dark emotional crisis, so to speak. And so it was her helping him with that. And that was the only main sex scene in the book up to this point. Now, this is a series, and I think the second book is out. I'm pretty sure I loaded that into my, I've either got it in Kindle or I've got it in my Kindle wish list. So, because I do want to continue on with the series. Now, was it the best thing I've ever read? No. Again, because it was a little short. It was only 240 pages, and it was a lot to pack into 240 pages, but it ends on a hell of a cliffhanger. So it's like, I got to know what's going to happen. So I will be definitely heading into the next book for sure, 100%. Okay, so then the next one on the list was I Might Be in Trouble by Daniel Aleman. Okay, so let me just find that here. So I've got it, I have it all listed here, all my notes on each one. So this is a story about David, and David he had been in a relationship with a guy by the name of Jeremy. They broke up, and the premise of the story is that David is a writer, and he's struggling to write something. He has an agent, and he can't seem to get it right. So what happens is he decides he's going to go out dating I think it was a dating app. It might have been a dating app. I read a lot of books. I can't remember all the detail, but I think it was a dating app. And he meets this guy, Robert, and him and Robert hit it off. They really like each other. Like they like each other. So they meet for like dinner, and it goes right through, and they spend the night together, and then he wakes up in the morning and Robert's dead. Okay? So that's where the craziness ensues. And the thing is, it's from that point on that all the choices that he makes are not the right, like, they're bad choices. I mean, the most logical thing that a person would do is somebody was in their bed and dead. You'd call 911. You would call 911. Now because he's like got an active imagination, he's like, oh my God, they're going to blame me. And all these things are going through his head. It's like, no, dude, just call 911. And then he gets his agent to come and explain. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to take this guy back to his hotel. Don't even ask. Just how the whole thing went down was ridiculous, but I think it was supposed to be ridiculous. I think that that was kind of like the whole idea of it, and the things that he found out about Robert in particular. Okay, Robert wasn't, best guy going. Stacy's agent, I got to give her cred because she hung in there for sure, and he did end up with a book out of the whole thing, which was kind of funny. And he had a rocky relationship with his parents. I think he kind of worked on that a little bit. And by the end of the book, he was kind of cool. What I thought was really funny is that the story that he wrote about was a guy named Daniel. Right? So it was kind of cute how the author did that, between the two. And I did like it. It just wasn't, top tier for me. But it was an enjoyable book. It was a fun read, but it was still dumb at certain points. I was like, oh, that was just not the right choice to make. Yeah. Okay. So the last one that we have on my least liked, but I did like it, very middle of the road, was Soulmate by Sally Hepworth. So first thing I will say is I like Sally Hepworth's writing style, and I actually kind of enjoyed how this book was written. So let me just bring it up here. Soulmate. So this is a story. It's essentially a story about 4 people, but there's 2 narrators, okay? There's Pippa and her husband, Gabe, and then there's Amanda and her husband, Max. Now, Pippa and Gabe own a house near the water on a cliff, and Gabe is the guy who goes out and talks people out of jumping. This is what's happened. I think they've had the house for a year, I think. And sure enough, they're having dinner one night, and Pippa looks out the window, and there's a woman standing on the cliff. So Gabe goes out to talk to her. And sure enough, this woman jumps. It turns out that they know who this woman is, or at least Gabe technically knows who this woman is, because her husband, Max, used to be Gabe's boss. So there is a kind of a whole backstory. So what happens through the book is you get Pippa and Amanda's point of view, and Amanda talks 2 different ways. She's talking in the past and she's talking in the present. But in the present, of course, she's dead. She's dead in both, but she's remembering and she's narrating what's happening leading up. And then Pippa is remembering things that happened in the past because she has ties to Max, Amanda's husband, and Gabe has ties to Amanda and Max. Like, it's all kind of very convoluted, but it is not confusing. I did not find it confusing. I did find it a touch boring at parts. You know, it was like, it was kind of dragging there a little. But I will say that it did kind of come together at the end. Okay. So I, you know, I think that it was okay that way, but I don't think that it was a bit choppy in some points. So again, I think the flow could have been fixed up just a little, you know, between the befores and the then. I think, is that what they call them? The befores and the nows. So Pippa's was the nows and the before, then, the nows and the thens, and Amanda's was the before and the after. So that was kind of how she differentiated them. And I mean, you know, it did make sense, but it just kind of, yeah, it was a little bit jarring, Anyway, so that's it for that. I mean, I would say that based on all of I would read another Sally Hepworth book. Based on this one, I would read another one of hers, just to see, because there's a lot of our authors that do the before and after, like Lucy Foley did that in the Midnight Feast, and I loved it. I loved how it moved back and forth between the two. So sometimes it really works for me, and sometimes it doesn't. And in this one, it was kind of middle of the road on that one for me. Okay, so that's it for those. I think, we'll kind of end the video there. And this video is going up on Monday. And then on Thursday, you'll be seeing the video that'll have my best of what I read at the end of May and include all the stats, because there's a lot of stats to go over. All right, we will see you soon.